SCORE Northeast Wisconsin and WHBY are pleased to bring you Biztalk, a chance for you to hear from entrepreneurs and professionals as they share their experiences. From starting to sustaining growth, learn the skills needed for your business to be successful. If you miss anything, you can catch the Biztalk podcast at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. And now from the Myron Construction Studio, it's Biztalk on WHBY.
Good Saturday morning to everybody. My name is Terry Finch, and I'm one of the co-hosts. And joining me this week is John Drangler. John, how are you today?
Hey, good, Terry. Good morning.
Okay, great. And this week we have a special Biz Talk with SCORE for you. We're going to be focusing on a couple things. One, first of all, it's the basis of it is a conference coming up in Wisconsin Dells on, I believe, September 22nd, called Accelerate Your Business for Women. And we have Neal Linkon joining us from the organizing committee. Welcome, Neal.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Before we get to Neal, I'm going to mention, too, that something else we're doing is this is the first time we've tried to do Biz Talk, but we're going to do a series of shows around women in business and featuring some of the people and success stories and opportunities that we can talk about in the area. So just to give you a little more background of what is happening, I'm going to start off just explaining why we're doing this. So most people will probably think, well, aren't the issues the same for men and women business owners? And mostly they are. We looked at research from J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of Montreal, the Kauffman Foundation, the U.S. Chamber, the U.S. government, and many of the direct business issues are pretty much the same. That's a bit of a generality, and we know in SCORE you don't use generalities. You work business by business, and you talk about their specific issues. But the generalities help you understand where opportunities are, too. And while men and women may start businesses for the same reasons and face many of the same issues and struggle with how to grow in the same way, there are some differences that are important, and they help explain why we're doing some of the things we're doing. And I want to just mention a few of them as we get going. The first one is that there's a pretty significant difference in certain areas in the types of business or industry that men start versus women. So there's a SCORE study that looked at this, and there's another one from, I think it was the Chamber of Commerce as well. And the one looked at 12 industries. In 8 of 12 industries, the male and female ownership was pretty similar. In 2 industries, men were much more prevalent, and that was construction and manufacturing. And in other 2 industries, women were much more prevalent. And as you look at what that was, it's services and healthcare and professional healthcare. So professional services and then health and wellness is how I'd put it. And that does say there's a different focus on what businesses are looking at in general and where you can help them. And the other factor that plays into this sometimes too is that when you look at the university graduation rate now, 57% of university graduates are female. Okay. Now, when I graduated in the mid 80s, it was about 40 to 45%. So it was never real. It was probably really low 50 years ago, but it wasn't that low then. But now more women are graduating, more women have the education and that interest, especially in the services field. So we think of women a little differently in what some of the industries they're in and how they got to where they're going. Interestingly enough, women are now owning approximately 44% of new businesses in the U.S. of all small businesses in the U.S. That was 30% in 2000, 5% 50 years ago. So there's been a significant trend with women starting small businesses. In fact, in SCORE, I believe it was last year, just over 60% of our clients were female. Okay. So we have a focus on different industries where we try and provide some help. There's a focus on more women starting businesses, but there are a couple of things that stand out as potential issues too. One of them that I see a fair bit is that women have less time to invest in their small businesses, at least initially. Again, that's a generality. There are significant differences there, but quite honestly, because they often have the family carer role as well, to different extent, they have less time to invest in their businesses. And I think it was about a 10 percentage point difference in the studies I saw. The other part of that is women start their businesses at an older age. Okay. And some of that has to do with family as well and getting started until the kids move out of the house. But related to all that is 90% of women-owned businesses have no employees. Okay. The equivalent number is about 70% for men. Now, some of that's got to do with time and when they start the business, because it takes time to lead up to that. But there are other factors there. But if you think about that, there's an opportunity with women-owned businesses where you want to talk more about hiring, what bringing employees in can do for you, employees versus contractors. So there's some differences there as well. So a couple other things that I saw, male-owned businesses tend to grow faster on average than women-owned businesses. Now this is changing a little bit, but it still is a pretty significant issue. And some of the factors I've already mentioned impact that. But women starting to contact scores, starting to work with mentors is a place where you can start to see that gap narrow a little bit. So another one, and this is a big issue that we see, is funding. This amazed me, but 64% of women who raised funding raised less than $10,000. The equivalent for men who raised funding was 14%. So men are typically raising more money for larger businesses. Now you think of that, some of that fits with I'm starting a construction company, I'm starting or working in a manufacturing company versus I'm starting a legal office or an accounting office. Okay. So there's some of that there, but there's also a historical trend that it has been in the past harder for women to get loans. And that's just a fact of the matter. Where I grew up in 50 years ago, a woman couldn't get a loan in many cases. So a lot has changed, but some of that just takes time. So there's reasons there. Another factor that feeds into it is Harvard Business School did some research, and their study showed that women are better at creating informal networks, but they do not always leverage that skill to build career-enhancing networks. To say it simply, men are really good at using their network to figure out how to build a business. Women are much better at using their network for social aspects of it and having relationships. It doesn't mean they can't do it. It means they haven't in the past as much. Okay. So they just started to show that there's some areas of opportunity, and we've seen that all along. I can tell you 10 years ago, the statistics did not say outcomes would be the same for men and women, for example, or that they have the same issues. But that's changed as more women come in. But the fundamental issues for women are still there's work-life balance because they do take a greater family raising role. Funding is still a continual issue for women in business. Developing that social capital, and that means really value from networks and relationships. They're very good at the informal networks, but turning that into a formal network and building collaboration are areas that we see. So what it really comes down to then is that we have a highly educated portion of the population that we really need in this world where artificial intelligence and other new technologies are coming in, and they really offer benefits. And to take that to its logical conclusion and build the strength, we need to provide them with support as they continue to grow and the world changes till we get to a point where most of these issues are gone. Some, like work-life balance, that's probably not going to change for a long, long time. It'll get better, but it's probably not going to change. An interesting study I saw as I was doing this too is when they talked to male owners about how much time they spent with their family, it was dramatically larger than what their spouses said they did. And you had the opposite with the women. And so that's just a research fact, and it doesn't change anything. It just says, hey, you have to be aware of it. But when you come right down to it, that's the issue, is what we want to talk to is help women work through some of the issues they face while recognizing that some of the things that are happening happen to both businesses, but you need to really focus on it. So in the second and third segment, we'll be talking with Neal, who's going to talk about some websites and things. And that's something that's critical for both businesses, but we want to make sure people understand it because especially in this world of social media, people believe that, maybe you don't need websites anymore. And I still tell my clients, look, if you're going to grow, you have to have a website. It can't just be social media. Some of them have proved
Terry,
wrong, but
Terry, you're talking about some of these facts and this research. Something score overall, approximately 60% of our new clients are women entrepreneurs and small business owners. I was looking at my own mentoring statistics. Mine are closer to 75%. And one of the common themes and threads I see is, first of all, in the creativity that's encouraging. And one of the other things that I've seen is we're in a growing cultural diversity in our communities, and small business owners have a whole set of challenges and opportunities because of that. And what's exciting about this topic and that we're going to be covering in subsequent weeks, as well as the conference coming up, is it couldn't be a better time to bring these things into focus for a very, as you said, a very significant part of our future success in communities with small business growth. And it's an exciting time.
okay. So, before we take our first break, we're going to start and just give you an overview of some of the shows that are coming up. A very short one, but we're going to start. And John, could you talk about next week's show?
Sure. Next week we have Kathy Tierney, who is the CEO of Community First Credit Union. A real great success story. This has been in our community in the Northeast Wisconsin, closing in on their 50-year anniversary next year, I believe. Kathy herself has been CEO for more than 30 years. This credit union has grown to about $6 billion in assets, serving more than 158,000 members with 29 branches in the area. And I think it's going to be great because this isn't going to be about Kathy, but really leadership as shown through longevity and the success of building a small business into an integral part of the financial community, and very much grounded on a singular mission, which is servicing their member customers. And that's going to be a really exciting way to kick off the series.
Yeah, and our second show will build on that. It's going to be around the news and entertainment industry. One of the guests is lined up, still not announced yet, and then there's another one still being worked on. So I won't say too much about it other than it's leaders in news and entertainment and what that means in this area. Okay. The third one is one that we're pretty excited about. It's a woman named Polly Moi. She is the executive director of the Schreiber Institute for Women's Leadership at University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. The Schreiber's Institute works to advance women both personally and professionally through education, inspiration, and networking. What I will say about Polly Moi, that we'll talk about more in the show, is that she was born in a refugee camp. She came to the U.S., started a family at 17, decided she'd go to school because an opportunity opened up. So she has an associate's degree from a community college. She's got a bachelor's degree. She's got a master's degree. She's got a PhD, and she worked 20 years in education. She's really impressive and is doing a lot in that field. So I'm really looking forward to that show and talking to her. And then the last one I'll mention is our last show. It's with that balance of work-life balance we'll be talking about. And we have guests from the Motherhood Alliance, 360U, and Sprout Chiropractic. And we're going to be talking with people who started with building their work time around their family. So their priority was raising their family, and then they started their business, and all of them work part-time, at least initially, and still have that balance that they're working through. So we have sisters Andrea Renkus and Brittany Suttner representing Motherhood Alliance. The Motherhood Alliance connects families with local health, wellness, and parenting resources, while also providing small businesses support, referrals, and the community needed to thrive. Then our record-setting guests on appearances on Biztalk is 360U. This will be their 6th appearance. Laura Beyer and Maria Stave will be here. They provide softball and baseball skills training while integrating mental training and confidence building into every lesson. They have will be here, and she provides specialized chiropractic care for families focusing on pediatric and prenatal care, but also serving individuals of all ages. And she is also someone she has got very strict boundaries for when she works and when she's with her family. And it'll be a good topic for conversation to figure out how they've done it, because they are three of the most successful businesses I've seen at balancing that work-life balance. So with that, we're at the point where we're going to take our first break. You're listening to Biztalk with Score on WHBI. I'll be right back.
Welcome back to Biz Talk with Score. We're glad you joined us this morning, as we're here talking with Neal Linkon from Score Southeast Wisconsin about the upcoming Accelerate Your Business for Women conference. As well, we've been talking about a series of Biz Talk shows in September and October. We'll be featuring women-owned and led businesses that's very much in support of the conference. Before continuing our conversation with Neal, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Score Northeast Wisconsin. We serve an 18-county area in Northeast Wisconsin, plus Menominee County in Michigan. We have about 35 volunteers, each an expert in their field, offering entrepreneurs no-cost and confidential mentoring. Those areas of expertise include IT, social media, marketing, cash flow, accounting, strategic planning, workflow, HR, retail, best practices, and many other areas. In order to register for a no-cost confidential mentoring session to learn more about SCORE Northeast Wisconsin, please visit our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. You can learn more about how SCORE chapter can assist you with starting or growing your business, and by easily completing an application online, you can be set up for a mentoring session. Go online, submit it to SCORE, and with a few days, a mentor will be contacting you to set up an initial meeting. And remember, SCORE is no cost and offers experts who can give you assistance in many different areas of your business. Again, to get started, just visit our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. Also, to support small business needs, Northeast Wisconsin SCORE chapter is always looking for new mentors and subject matter experts. If you have experience and would like to share with others, we'd love to talk to you. We welcome volunteers with experience in all aspects of business, and small business owners really need your help and your experience to make a real difference in their success and in their communities. Go to score.org/Northeast Wisconsin, click on the volunteer button, and fill out the short application. And we'll be getting back to you soon to explain more on how you can be part of SCORE. Thanks again for joining us this morning on Biz Talk. And now back to our show. Neal, Terry introduced a bit in the first segment about the Accelerate Your Business for Women seminar coming up in September. Could you give us a little bit of background about the conference, the seminar, and your involvement with it, please?
No, happy to do it. I appreciate the opportunity. And Terry really set it up so very well with a lot of the data he talked about. The other thing that we've observed, and in talking to others around the country with SCORE, they've observed the same thing that kind of led us to why this is an important thing to do. We find that those female entrepreneurs, the women-owned business owners, were far more likely to request another woman as their mentor. Men typically don't do that. Women were doing it with greater regularity. So again, for all the reasons that Terry talked about, and that, the observation was made that a conference, it's just a one-day conference, for mostly women. Men are welcome. We had, I think, a half dozen of the 100 people who were with us last year. But a conference really aimed at women, would be well received, and it has been. The feedback we got, especially last year, is that they really loved the content. But like with a lot of conferences, the reports we got back is they got a lot of value out of the networking. A lot of other female entrepreneurs that they were sitting with, talking with, having lunch with, whatever, that they really got a lot out of that. So this is the third year of the conference. It gets bigger every year, and we're hoping that that stays the same this year. It's at the Kalahari Resort in the Dells, so you couldn't ask for a whole lot nicer place. There's a block of rooms that are available at a discounted rate. And in case you're wondering, those rooms do include full access to the water park. So bring the family and friends. They can have a great time while you're in there learning. But it's a packed day, and it is just one day. But we've got two dynamite nationally known speakers. that are inspirational, motivational. One of them, if her videos are any indication, if you're not on your feet when she's done, it'll be a surprise. And then some excellent breakout sessions, if I do say so myself. So I think you'll find a lot of value in it, not just in the content, but in the people you'd meet there.
Well, Neal, knowing that you're leading one of the breakout sessions, why don't you talk a little bit maybe about the topics that are going to be held?
Right. So besides the lead speakers, Darcy Luoma is one of them who's going to share 3 powerful steps to clear some hurdles in your way. Most of them, if not all of them, were subject of recent success stories on the SCORE website. So they've had some success. They'll be sharing some of the secrets of their success and the challenges they've overcome. And then there's breakout sessions with the Small Business Administration and the kind of resources that they have to offer. There's the session I'm doing on marketing. There's one on financial management. There's one on the use of artificial intelligence in your business and one on handling legal issues. So there's a lot of good content coming up in just one day.
Perfect. We're going to take our second break. You've been listening to Biztalk with SCORE and WHBY, and we'll be right back with Neal Linkon. Welcome back to Biztalk. Thank you for joining us this week. I'm Terry Pinch, and with co-host John Drangler, and we're talking to Neal Linkon about the Accelerate Your Business for Women 2025 conference. Neal gave you an overview of what's going to be included in the conference when it does happen. And what we thought we'd do in this segment is talk in a little more detail about one of the presentations that Neal is doing at the conference, because it's one that we get questions on regularly from clients. It's around websites, and and there's good reasons for it, but then people don't always do great websites. So you want to help them work to develop their website. And that's what Neal is going to be presenting on. So Neal, as we get started, could you tell us about the breakout group and why you're doing it and what led to this being in the conference?
Right. So I was involved with it last year. I gave a presentation on using social media for business purposes that apparently was very well received. And so the organizers asked if I would come back and speak again, but on a different topic. And like most of the content in the conference, it's based on, as you put it, Terry, the questions we're getting from clients. What's on their mind? What do they need help with? And one of the questions that I get a lot, that others throughout SCORE get a lot, is, do I really need a website? Part of it is the very reason you just gave, is, social media is so prevalent. I've already got like a Facebook page or a LinkedIn page or an Instagram account, whatever it might be. I'm having reasonable success there. It's free. I know how to use it. Can't I just use that? But the other element that's coming up more and more is those of you who hasn't done a Google search recently, the result you get now tries to answer your question right at the top of the page. It's called an AI overview. And what it's meant for a lot of websites is a significant reduction in organic search traffic. And organic search traffic is somebody searches for a term, finds your business, clicks on your link, and gets to your website that way, because they're getting the answers to their questions from that AI overview. With that as a phenomenon that's undeniable, some organizations are reporting up to 80% reductions in their organic search results. And the prevalence of social media, the question we keep getting is, do you really need a website? Now, if you're interested in one of the other topics at the conference, I'll give you the answer right now. And as Terry said, the answer is, yeah, I think you really do still need a website. There's a number of very important reasons for that. But the session that I'm going to give also then talks about, okay, let's assume you agree with me that you absolutely have to have a website. Here are some very basic, doable, fundamental actions to make sure you're doing it as well as you possibly can. So we don't just answer the question, do you need a website? We then talk about how to do websites as well as possible.
So I've had a number of clients who have built their own websites because there's tools out there to make it easier. But do you recommend people go that route, or are they better off hiring a professional to develop their website?
Great question. I often say that if you can order products on Amazon, you can probably build your own website. There are tools like you were referring to. They're called content management systems, or CMS for short. All they are is software that allows someone without any technical or programming skills at all to build a solid functional website. To get started, you don't need a big elaborate website, and you can probably build it yourself. You probably shouldn't look for fancy designs. You're better off using one of the templated designs that are offered by the content management systems. Several of them offer free versions. They all offer free versions, at least to start, so you can test drive them and play around with it a little bit.
Advantages of hiring a professional versus doing it yourself, and disadvantages.
Well, the basics of setting up a website, just content, if you will, are pretty simple. As soon as you start adding elements of interactivity, giving people the opportunity to communicate through the website, to sign up for things, to buy products, it can get a little bit more complicated. The other element where oftentimes technical support is needed, site speed is a very important element, not just for your user experience, but it's a very critical aspect of the Google search algorithm. There are free tools out there that'll tell you how fast or slow your website is. It'll also give you very specific reasons why your website's slow, and it's often some of the technical structure of how the site's set up that maybe you weren't aware of when you built that initial site yourself. Sometimes some technical resources can be helpful in setting up those interactive elements I mentioned.
Learn eventually to scale back to the right amount. People tend to do more, and then they figure out they need to do the right amount and
Right.
what that is. But should you use a website differently and not send out the same type of email messages that you do from social media?
I mean, look, the two can work hand in hand. The kinds of things you're putting out on social media don't necessarily have to be added to your website on a regular basis. One of the mistakes I see people making, and it's somewhat of a detail item, but the impression it leaves is not a good one, is when they launched their website, they thought that was a good idea. They thought they needed a blog. All the content management system tools offer a blog module. They'll write a couple of columns to match some of the stuff they're putting out in social media, and then they're out of ideas. That's fine right now. A year from now, that blog looks completely inactive because your last post was a year ago. And so trying to keep up the two together is not necessary at all. On the other hand, if you're active in the world of social media, what a great opportunity to link back to your website from time to time to get more information based on something you're posting on. So the two work hand in hand, but you don't necessarily put the exact same content on both.
Neal, one of the things backing up a little bit when we deal with clients is, to Terry's point, they're active on social media already, even in the ideation stages of starting their business or
Right.
through their friends network, et cetera. But it's tempting. It's the sexy thing to work on, is to, get a website developed. But many times as mentors, we're pulling them back into their strategic business plan and having those elements in place. What would you say to a client, in terms of what's a foundation, a predecessor type of activity that should take place that encourage, the proper development of a website subsequently and its success?
Presence to point people to where they can really engage on a business level. That's not necessarily the best use of your time. And I'll give you a little bit of perspective. I've been asked, and I've done it several times now, a 2-hour long webinar for SCORE clients called Digital Marketing 101, 201, and 301. We start with the basics. That's the 101. We get a little bit more advanced with 201. And then we talk about, now we're getting serious when we talk about the 301 stuff. Social media is at the end of that 301 section as far as I'm concerned. It is the most time-intensive, high-risk marketing strategy that you can employ. If I were to say the one thing I find my SCORE clients seem to struggle with the most is focus on the things that make the most difference early on. And social media draws that focus away from things like a solid business plan, like what is their competitive differentiator, like a lot of very key fundamental things without which a business isn't going to succeed. Social media is great. I love it. I think it can be highly effective. It's not the place to start.
Right. And even the definition of who your target customer is and your target markets. So when you do that website development, social media, you can be more focused in your messaging and developing your brand accordingly.
Completely. Look, one of the reasons I give for why a website's important is if you decide that your digital destination, it's hard to imagine having a business these days without some kind of digital destination. Business page, I'm likely to be a little put off by that because I'm not a Facebook user. I happen to be a very avid Facebook user. I'm on it several times a day, every day. If I'm looking for a new service provider or merchant and their digital presence is a Facebook business page, I discount them as either being too new or not being serious. And I'm an avid Facebook user. So if that's where you're putting all your digital destination eggs, if you will, is in the social media space, you are by definition excluding potential customers or clients, and you don't really need to do that.
How would a small business owner understand which channel is the best for their business or industry? How do they figure that out?
I mean, which marketing channel is the best? Well, look, basic marketing theory is, you got to identify who your target audience is and, you go where they are. And that sounds very simplified. But I mean, I often, if you're a bubblegum fan, the old Bazooka Joe cartoons, there's a great Bazooka Joe cartoon where he's on his hands and knees under a street lamp and a guy walking by says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I dropped a quarter. I'm trying to find it." He said, "Where'd you find it?" He's across the street over there. "Why are you looking here?" "Well, the light's better," right? Don't be looking right there just because the light's better. You got to be where your clients are. And look, if they're all in the world of social media, great, but you still have to have a way to reach them. And you still have to have a way for when they're out there looking for someone like you to be able to find you. I referenced earlier that organic search results are down significantly. That doesn't mean they're gone. I look at a lot of websites and a lot of data, and it's a rare website where at least half of their traffic isn't coming from organic search. Now, that's a lot less than it used to be, but that's still a pretty big number. And so, find out where your clients are, where they're likely to be found, and you've got to be where they are.
And one of the things I've found too with a lot of clients is they get wrapped up in the social aspect of social media and their posts, and they forget completely about their strategy and their marketing, their target markets and where they're supposed to be going. Does a website help you get away from that a little bit because of the structure involved in setting it up?
If you've done it well. Yes, most definitely. One of the things we're going to talk about is as people are setting up their website, the single most commonly missed and critically important step is a little research on the kinds of words and phrases people are using to find businesses like yours, right? When you identify what those things are, you've got total control over how those words and phrases are then used on your website. Ultimately, a lot of this goes back to your brand. I just had a call with a client the other day who immediately jumped to logo. I said, that's not your brand, right? Your brand is how people think and feel about you when they think of you and do business with you. What do you want that to be? And then is everything you're doing reflective of that vision, right? And oftentimes in social media, people are still using their personal page where they did all kinds of crazy things coming out of college, right? And is that the brand for your business? That's the brand for you personally. It's not necessarily the brand for your business. Your website gives you the chance to refine that and totally control
it. So as people look at building a website and they start with the basics and keep it simple, where do you, give me just in general, what things are they doing well? When they look at a website, do you typically say that's a good job, you don't have to change that, versus where do they need help?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, most of the clients that I have that are just starting out and just building a website, there's a lot that needs to be fixed. The ones that do it best, the design is relatively simple. Fancy designs only help you if you're in the design business, right? They've kept their content fairly straightforward. They haven't put all the content on the homepage. They've got individual pages for specific topics, which gives you the better chance of showing up in the Google search results anyway. And their content is fairly concise. They don't have too many paragraphs. Their paragraphs aren't too long. They make use of bulleted lists, numbered lists. They try to answer the kinds of questions that people have on their minds, and they provide good quality content. That makes for a good website.
I think, Neal, what you said before is really important, is understanding your brand really means you're understanding your target market's needs and you're articulating externally. One of the things I often find, and this happens with mature companies, is you become too inwardly focused and you end up being kind of like a encyclopedia of your own information, and you find then that people have a hard time navigating because they're not sure that you have what they're looking for. And I think your message about being on brand and being on top of those target market needs is a really important message when getting started, because that's going to help with the search engine optimization part of it, right?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. One of the questions I ask a new client all the time is, okay, you've got competition. I've yet to find somebody that didn't. Why would a client or customer choose you over the competition? Simple question, right? And so many of the new entrepreneurs, well, yeah, I guess I got to think about that. And they go into a half-hour spiel, and it's like, you've got to narrow that, the proverbial elevator speech, and it's even more important on the web. People skim, they don't read necessarily on the web. Where's that one sentence explanation as to who you are, why you're unique, and why I should be interested in you? And if they can't get to that level of focus, they are going to struggle with search engine optimization and also with building a client or customer base.
So one of the things I see a lot with new businesses is that their only activities around marketing are from social media and a website. And that's because it's free. Is that really the best way to do it? Or when should a small business start looking at some paid advertising, some paid efforts around whether social media or other ways of doing it to build their business?
That's a difficult question to answer, but I will say that the one criteria that I would feel would need to be in place before they start spending money on stuff like that is, do they have a good understanding of how their current website is working? What do their metrics look like? Do they have the ability to put the tracking in place so that if they do start spending money on advertising, they can tell if they're getting the return on investment that investment requires, right? There's that old adage, the marketing executive who says, I know half of my ad budget is wasted. I just don't know which half. In the world of digital marketing, you should know which half, right? And if you're not prepared to make those connections, if you haven't implemented, for example, Google Analytics on your site, if you haven't looked into how to put tracking codes on your URLs, none of which is very hard, by the way. I teach clients how to do it all the time. If you've got those things in place, then there's some places I would recommend spending a little bit of money to see what kind of results you're getting, and then work your way into that. It starts a little bit. Don't throw a ton of money into something because it sounds exciting, because if you don't get the return, now you spent a ton of money. And sometimes it's hard to tell what's going to work and what isn't.
All right, great. We're going to take our final break. You're listening to Biz Talk with Score on WHBY. We'll be right back after these messages.
Welcome back to Biz Talk with Score. Before we rejoin Neal and Terry and myself, I'd like to thank the sponsors and donors who bring Biz Talk with Score to you each weekend. We couldn't present Biz Talk without their generous support. First, a thank you to Hailing & Associates. Hailing & Associates helps small businesses and individuals not just with preparing their tax returns, but also planning ahead. It's a collaborative approach that helps you minimize your taxes for this year and beyond. Hailing & Associates, personal connection, positive results. As well, we'd like to thank the Johnson Financial Group. Whenever you're in your life or your life of your business, Johnson Financial Group works to understand your goals and matches the banking and wealth services you need to help you complete your mission. Also, a thanks goes out to the Business News for promoting our program in the business newspaper that serves Northeast Wisconsin. The paper is delivered bi-weekly and contains relevant and useful information about the business community in this region. And finally, we would like to recognize the David L. and Rita E. Nelson Fund within the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region for their generous donation in support of Biztalk and SCORE Northeast Wisconsin. So back to our show. Neal and Terry, could you tell us a little bit and remind our listeners about the date and location of the Accelerate Your Business for Women seminar and how can folks register?
Sure. It's September 22nd. Starts bright and early at 8 a.m. It's at the Kalahari Resort in the Dells. And registering is pretty simple. You can go to the SCORE Northeast site. You can go to the SCORE Southeast Wisconsin site, or just go to score.org, do a search for Accelerate, and you'll find it in one of the first few results there. Click on it and all the details are there, including how to get one of the room blocks if you decide you want to spend the night.
And there is a small fee. It's, I believe, $89, but it's well worth it to join in. That's obviously to help cover expenses as we run the conference. But definitely any of the Wisconsin SCORE sites should have it. Ours, again, is score.org/Northeast Wisconsin, but Southeast Wisconsin has it as well. And it's certainly a great opportunity for people to get together and network, and especially women, to talk through some of the things that are going on there. And as Biztalk with SCORE, we're glad and happy to be able to be a part of promoting it. We think this is a great conference and can do a lot for small businesses. And I've had a number of clients go both years and come back with really positive comments about what they learned. As for Biztalk with SCORE, we mentioned earlier again that we're doing a series of shows and working through those now. But we start off with a great show with Kathy Tierney, one of the leaders of the credit union movement in Wisconsin, talking about her leadership career. Next year, I believe, will be her 50th year with the company, and she's been CEO for 30, done a great job. So it'll be real interesting to hear her story. We've got, again, a news and entertainment show we're putting together. We've got a discussion with the leader of the Institute for Women's Leadership and at UWGB. And it's not only doing support type of things, but as a university, they do research. So they're providing information and learning about women's leadership. And Polly Moa has a great background to talk about those sorts of things. So we're looking forward to that. And then our last show is planned for October 11th right now. And that is on work-life balance, and a lot of the things we've talked about earlier, or some of the things we talked about earlier, are around women starting businesses more often still being the primary family caregiver, not always, but often, and how do they balance those two? And in order to have that discussion, we've got 3 businesses that were started initially as part-time, built around caregiving. And all 3 businesses have done really well. And so we'll hear their story of how they did that and how they managed it. So overall, it's a really good series of shows that we're pretty excited about. And we think that it's an opportunity for women in business to work together, network together, and learn more. Because as Neal mentioned, a lot of business owners who ask for a mentor are asking for a female mentor. And we don't always have those in every location at every time available, because mentors are often limited in the time they can invest in this. And so this is an opportunity to say, hey, come together with a group of women, and you'll find you get a lot of benefit from having those discussions together. So it's something we're really looking forward to. And Neal, do you have any other comments to add?
Yeah, Terry, the only other thing I would add about the conference is also a thank you for some of our major sponsors. I mean, the $89 fee pays for the room and the food. The cost of putting on the rest of the event is borne largely by sponsors, but even more importantly for the attendees, they're there with tables and representatives. So if you've got questions, they're there to help you. And groups like Colony Brands and Carrick Consulting Group, Byline Bank, BMO Bank, Brava Magazine, and several others. Just another opportunity to meet with some folks who might prove helpful for you in your business going forward.
That's great. And John, as you look to this series of shows, what do you see as the opportunity of both for the conference and the shows? What do you see as the opportunity for women business owners?
Well, I really think as we find out in our daily mentoring sessions, these are hitting all the real important topics that just enhance the toolbox of entrepreneurs and small business owners. And I think taking advantage of the breakouts, taking advantage of the messaging coming from the keynote speakers, and probably most important, simply the networking, hearing the issues and challenges and opportunities that fellow women business owners share. The best advice, the best counsel can come from the encouragement of others facing the same situations. And that's what makes this conference, this seminar, to be of real value. And Neal, thank you for your participation in it, and also just bringing your expertise in website development as a mentor and working in the SCORE network. This is what makes it a vibrant, successful resource for entrepreneurs.
Very happy to do it. Hope to see many of you in the Dells later next month.
Okay. So thank you very much to the listeners as well. You've been listening to Biztalk with SCORE. You hear this every weekend on WHBY or online, but on Wednesdays we release a show again on podcast, so you can go to iTunes, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube, all the different podcasters, and you can find it there. If you go to our website at spore.org/Northeast Wisconsin, you can also find the last 8 years of shows, and I'll mention we're in our 25th year now again, and we thank WHBY for that. We really appreciate it. So everybody have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.